universal data and understands your business. So yeah, long-winded way to answer your question, but don't turn on PMAX and broad keywords. I would just stay away from that and keep an ey out for that setting in Google Ads that like automatically turns on broad.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, I've seen that actually.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Optimizer Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Binek, and today we're going to be talking to James Gregg. He is the founder of Search Click Boom, which is a PPC agency that works with B2B SaaS. We're going to be talking all about how Google Ads has decided to take its platform more in a B2C focused measure, I guess you could say, and how that is impacting B2B media buyers. And specifically, we're going to be talking through the changes that Google has made that makes it harder to drive consistent performance for B2B media buyers and some practical strategies on how you can drive consistent and measurable pipeline in the B2B marketing space from Google Ads. Hope you enjoy today's episode. James, thanks so much for being on, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a while. I don't know when we last talked, but the last time we talked, you were in Denver heading to Utah and then to Oregon from Atlanta or something like that.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that. We were in Salt Lake for a bit. Now we're in Oregon and we're on the coast. It's flannel weather. So the place we're staying at doesn't even have AC. It's just 60-ish degrees year round, which is just crazy. But apparently, yeah. And I don't know, I didn't know this, but maybe you do. But you know how like Oregon's just kind of foggy all the time, or if you're on the coast, it's foggy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that happens just because you have like the sea breeze with cold air, and then the mainland is hot. And whenever that air collides, it just gets foggy on the coast.
Okay, that makes sense. I had never put any logic to me just saying that it's always foggy, like in Seattle, So that makes sense.
You just think about it though, right? Like you're just like, oh, it's foggy in the Pacific Northwest. I didn't know why, but
yeah, they're just so hand in hand. You stop looking for answers at some point. But yeah, that makes sense.
So let's introduce the topic that we're going to be talking about to the listeners, and we're just going to riff on it, I think, for about 30 minutes and just kind of talk about everything that we've seen over the years and, your expert opinions, my slightly less than expert opinions on things, and then kind of go from there. But so let's talk about the theme. Okay. It is going to be about how Google Ads has really subjectively, with really small updates over the past few years, really refocused on B2C and focusing on those B2C ad spenders and less on B2B paid media buyers. And because of that, it's making it a lot harder for your B2B folks to actually drive results using Google Ads. Because of the things that Google Ads is pushing, it's making it more catered towards B2C, and B2C tactics, we know this, they don't work in B2B. And if you want them to work in B2B, you're just going to end up wasting a lot of money. So, James, I'd love for you to kind of expand on some of those. Like, people are probably wondering, like, what the heck is he talking about? So could you kind of give us like a little bit of the rundown on some of the things that have changed over the past couple of years that kind of make Google Ads more B2C focused?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is just like the broadening and the increasing focus on data from the Google side of things. And what I mean by that is like if you're familiar with match types in Google Ads, it's like basically the constraint in which your search term can attract kind of search variance. And so, it's basically how Google has been starting to say, you know what, you used to have all this control on it. And it's out of they want to make money, but it's out of a good place in terms of they're trying to get, small B2C shop owners involved in using Google Ads and make it easy. So like they want you to be able to just put in 4 keywords, turn on an automated bid strategy, and then get, more conversions in. And when I mentioned data earlier, I mean, because like they have this pretty good awareness if you're selling red basketball shoes of who your customer is, and those automated strategies will catch on quickly, and you really don't need that big of a budget to get those to work because, purchase size is smaller and that correlates to your cost per click. So that's kind of the preface, is that just like B2B, and this is kind of my soapbox a little bit. Like if you follow me on LinkedIn or anything, it's just like this is what I talk about a lot because it's literally the most pervasive issue in Google Ads. And Google Ads might not be right for you, so this might be completely irrelevant to your B2B SaaS even within that niche. But yeah, I mean the whole thing is that like you can't run it like a B2C company anymore. Not that you ever could, but like I think the campaigns for a B2B SaaS and a B2C company would have looked a lot more similar 10 years ago than they should today, I think.
Absolutely. I something that happened when I started learning Google Ads, literally just, I mean, it was like right before 2020, like 2018, 2019 was when I really like dipped my feet into the Google Ads world. They still had this thing called broad match modified, BMMs. And gosh, dude, that stuff was awesome for B2B because you basically, for anyone that doesn't know, you could put a little like plus sign next to a word, a keyword, and you could have multiple plus signs of multiple words in a string. And the way those worked was as long as those words were triggered in the Google search, then your ad would populate. So you could have like 3 or 4 words in there, and they don't have to be like in some certain order. As long as they're in the query, then your ad shows, which is incredibly useful for B2B
That
because
was everything.
yeah, B2B, I mean, I preach this a lot now with like my service offering, but I think that a lot of people are not finding you through category terms anymore. They're finding you through capability terms and outcome-based terms. And so that broad match modified, I literally dream of getting that back because that would make so much more sense for our capability driven like campaigns. And now it's just gone. I think it was removed in like 2021 or maybe it was even 2020. I don't even remember when, but it was a long time ago. But
Yeah,
people
it's
don't know
kind
what it
of been
was
a
like.
yeah, they really don't. And it's funny how everyone who knows anything, or like you audit a lot of accounts, I'm sure, where like the manager of the account is like their demand gen lead, so they're doing 100 other things. That's why they're talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll talk about like I used to manage, when it used to be exact match was actually exact match, and broad match modified was there and stuff like that. The way people talk about it is like the way like an angry old guy talks about like prices in the 80s. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's like something that they, to their chagrin, they miss, and you should miss it greatly because like being able to say I need the word you know for enterprise in there is like, we're doing it now but with negative keywords to make sure that shows up. It was just
Yeah.
such a hack. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that's the thing. So I guess like really to summarize though the whole issue, it's just Google wants you to use the broad match type, like James was mentioning. And because of that, you are going to end up wasting a lot of spend. And your ads are going to show up for a lot of spots that like are queries that maybe just don't make sense. And because of that, you're going to waste a lot. You're going to confuse your prospects. You're going to show up with like competitors that are not competitors at all, not even in the space. And ultimately, you're just not going to see performance. Like you're just not going to have like consistent, steady performance. And this is the thing, there's some, I'll call them heretics. There are some heretics out there, James, that think that they're like, you know what? Doesn't matter because CPL is the same. They're like, you can drive the same number of quality leads from just like 10x the number of unqualified clicks. But when you ask them for the data, they're like, oh, it's just a thing. Like they don't really ever have anything to share with you, or at least in my opinion, they don't. And I'm like, well, like I get it. Like maybe that makes sense, but I've never seen it before. I've never seen it work because,
I agree.
yeah.
It's like a willingful disillusionment in performance. It's like it's this like underlying want to see more conversions in the account that keeps people going back to broad keywords. It's like Yeah, but if we move to phrase, our cost per SQL might go down, but our salespeople will see that our MQLs go down as well, and they'll get upset. And it's like, well, half of those MQLs weren't qualified. Then what was the point of paying to get them in the first place? And a lot of people are just more satisfied by seeing more conversions in the account without seeing like any kind of down life cycle results. So.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's where the heretics get, they feed off of button click conversions and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, and especially when you get into organizations where there is like a specialist managing the ads, but they're working with you because they're not seeing the revenue, the return on investment. But the specialist is like, hey, look at the native data that's coming from Google Ads, like conversion rates really high, like CPL is really low. And like, yeah, it's great. I used to be that guy. I really did. I used to be the dude that was like, I'm doing everything I possibly can as a specialist. I was working in Fortune 500 at the time, and I was working for a company called NCR, and they were selling like POS systems for small businesses. So this was like a pretty good use case for Google Ads, especially with broad match modified. And we were
yeah,
driving those results, but like at the end of the day, like I wasn't looped into the sales process. Sales cycles were a lot longer, and these leads weren't closing. And I was getting
yeah,
that information from like the higher ups, but I was like, well, I'm doing everything I possibly can. So I was just like frustrated. So I guess that whole little monologue there is just to say there's a couple people you need to satisfy in this equation. You have like the higher up leaders, you have the salespeople, and then you have like the specialists too that you need to like kind of educate on like what's best nowadays. And that's why I think our role as consultants is becoming more important just because of how less geared Google Ads is towards the B2B buyers.
I agree. I agree. And I know that's true. And with all like, do you ever get caught kind of in the overhype about AI like taking our jobs as managers, us specifically? And I sometimes get like fearful of that. And then I'll go audit an account and look at the searches their broad match keywords are matching
Mhm.
with, and they'll be targeting like a construction management software keyword, and they'll be like, oh, there's a good cost per conversion there. But then you go look in the search terms, and every one of their conversions came on keywords like Google or construction jobs or something like that. Like I see
Yeah.
the search term Google is searched way more than you think. And it's triggered by a lot of random broad keywords. And then so you're like, all right, so yeah, this keyword's getting MQLs, but let's go into the CRM and look at those because I can see that the actual searches that are leading to those are not on theme at all. So I'd be very surprised if they were also relevant to your customer base. Um, and then we look, and none of them have turned into customers or anything like that. And that's you know 8 times out of 10 how I prove to someone that they need a manager is that like, let's go check out the search terms. I could almost like just say that in my messaging.
Yeah. I think that you kind of brought up an interesting point about AI. I have talked about this a few times. In fact, the last podcast I just released it. I've kind of taken this hot take approach where I really do think that lower level specialist roles, I think that they could be on their way out in the next 5 years with like the advancements in AI, but with the caveat that you need to have really good strategy. You need to have someone that is driving the ship. So someone that's
Hmm.
like, we are launching this campaign that's focused on capabilities, outcomes, and category terms. And here are the keywords. And they're, by the way, they're all exact match. They're not broad or phrase because the AI is not going to be able to figure that one out, like in terms of what's important and what's not. But as long as you have someone that is providing strategy at least on a quarterly basis, and then you have like your AI tool, like an Optio, for example, but like a little bit more on steroids with more hands-on AI number crunching abilities, then yeah,
Hmm.
great. Like I think in 5 years that's going to be the case. But I don't think that strategical decision making people are going to be on their way out anytime soon.
I think you're right. I think the bigger AI change we have to prepare for is just like what search is going to look like as it evolves, like the actual
True.
results and how that targeting is going to change. Like that's probably our first concern. And I don't have any.
I don't really have any theories other than the fact that I think it'll actually look really similar. I feel like you will have some sort of interface with the AI output, and the AI will be selling ad spots still in its answer, but it will also bring up organic results as well. But I think
Mhm.
similar to how when Google Ads began, I think that there will be potentially cheaper ad spots um, in the AI's response, and because of that, I
Mm,
think like people will be confused with what is actually an ad and what is actually organic, similar to like what happened in the beginning whenever Google Ads started. People didn't really know, like, you know, the older generations or even the younger generations, they didn't even know what they were looking at was an ad for a hot second. Now, like maybe information will pass a little faster through the generations and through people, and they'll realize what's ads. But I still think like I still find myself clicking on ads. Like if I search for something and I see an ad that's compelling, I'm gonna click it, and it's the landing page's job to convert me at that point. But I mean, that's my theory. I really do feel like the AI interface will kind of still include ads. There's no way that they won't. I mean, Google's model, what, like 70% of the revenue is made through ads, or might be even higher than that. I think it's like a really high
right.
number. Yeah.
That's why we're like that's ultimately what keeps me that gives me good sleep at night is that Google still needs to make ad revenue and I didn't waste, 10 years becoming an expert in Google Ads because they still need to do that. I feel like we're probably going to switch to like where broad match turns into more like a long tail broad match where they're like context based targeting, so, it becomes less about how you target like this one or, 2 to 3 word broad match keyword, and more where you're like saying, SaaS company for construction workers or something like that. I'm
Oh,
curious if they would move towards that where you're adding context.
that is super cool. I didn't even really think about the triggering of things because I was still thinking that it would pull from the same index, but thinking about like its actual output, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, because then it's just like different kinds of contextual targeting, which sort of gets into social media ads,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
in a way, but maybe it's utilizing more of like what a lot of people don't use in Google Ads now, which is like the targeting features and the audience features. I think, I can't tell you the number of accounts I look at that don't have segments added where they could be
Hmm.
used for advanced bidding adjustments. Like that's like such a missed opportunity, but I feel like maybe that will become really important with this new AI search capability
Yeah,
in the next few years.
yeah. Yeah, I think people even just like one of my I get on these like loops of being like a fanboy of certain tactics in Google Ads. But one of my favorite ones that I've been using a lot is just like a retargeting search ads campaign. And you can use broad match, and if they're in theme with the search and they've been to your site before, like, but then people will stop there and not put in like the different audiences of retargeting all users versus like that and people who went to your pricing page or clicked on a specific button. Like you can still layer those things in, like you're saying, like these audiences, if they're not in there, aren't helping you leverage the AI to the maximum ability. And if they are, even if they're in observation mode, they're helping in some way. So, um, yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I guess is a long way to.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Okay, so we kind of talked about the preface of okay, like Google Ads, very B2C focused, pushing B2B advertisers and lower level specialists that maybe don't even know any better to focus on broad match keywords. Um, there's something else I want to talk about we didn't really highlight, which is like performance max. So I don't know if you have any like strong takes on performance max, but I think there's two memes in the like Google ad space right now, and one is broad match, which we've already talked about, and the other one is performance max. So
Yeah.
James, like, what are your thoughts on it? I'm curious.
Yeah, I feel like when you ask a question like that, there's like my has to take a hard stance social media response where it's like absolutely never use broad match, absolutely never use PMAX. Um, I still think that with a Google Ads campaign that I'm running. However, so first of all, let's start with like the right answer if you had to choose one or the other.
Sure.
Don't use broad match or PMAX. PMAX will not understand your niche, manufacturing procurement for electronics SaaS. It's not going to get what that is. And same thing with broad match. I mean, the looser you get, the more I would just consider those algorithms the same thing because it's basically Google understanding your business. The more control you give to it. So broad match, PMAX, wouldn't use it. Too much of a black box with PMAX. You don't have any control over it really. And if you're going to get conversions, if you're using it and you're getting conversions, like keep a close eye on those conversions, see what kind of quality they're bringing. Are they just, random bots filling out forms, or are they actually using your product and, checking out that kind of thing? I will say my one caveat on that is as you get to the B2B SaaS side of products, where that's more widely applicable to all businesses, like consider like a Calendly or a Monday, that start behaving more like, your cost for the software is lower. Again, it's applicable to every B2B SaaS. I think as you get to that point, that maybe if you've maxed out all of your phrase match and exact match keywords and all your themes and you're looking for some more conversion volume, that's more where a PMAX or broad keywords can actually come into play. And I have seen success in those scenarios where because you're getting the data because, theoretically, if your CLV is lower, then your cost per clicks are lower, you're getting more CLV, you're getting more customers in a given month, and you can feed PMAX that data, and PMAX already has some like universal data and understands your business. So yeah, long-winded way to answer your question, but don't turn on PMAX and broad keywords. I would just stay away from that and keep an eye out for that setting in Google Ads that like automatically turns on broad.
Yes. Oh yeah. No, I've seen that
Mhm.
actually. That setting actually triggered me so much the other day because I made a campaign and I didn't realize that it was added in the settings. So I was in there, and you know how you can add, like, if you don't want to work in Excel and you don't want to be lazy like me sometimes, I'll add all the keywords and then I'll just like select all and then change match type. Well, if
Yeah,
you have that setting checked that says like only use broad match, it'll just say like match type failed, like
yeah,
this applied to 0. And I was like, I've never seen this before. This is so weird. And then I was like, dude, what is going on? So I looked in the settings and I saw this new thing and it was like only use like broad match. And I'm pretty sure it used to be defaulted to off and then it was defaulted to on. So I was like, bro.
defaults on.
So
Yeah,
yeah, dude, I was like, I could only imagine someone like older who didn't have the patience or it wasn't their job really to make Google ads, that they'd just be like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, I'll just keep it on.
yeah.
Like, that is so kind of sneaky by Google ads.
It's always Google's so sneaky when they don't want you to know about a setting. It's like they can really hide it, like expansion targeting, those auto
Yeah.
suggestions that you have to go through like 3 layers of settings to get to turn off auto suggestions.
Yeah.
And they just like I mean, I don't know. Our perspective is so narrow with B2B SaaS, but they seem like settings that literally are just there to spend your money without you knowing.
Exactly.
Yeah, it just
You use unused ad spend, aka
yeah,
let's just take the money you've allocated and not give you results. Like,
I know. That's such a that's such like a I'm sure that's been memized for years, but because the Google Ads reps have been saying it for years, where you talk to them and they're like,
yeah.
well, to improve your performance, you just have to raise your budget. And I was like, well, wouldn't that be nice? Like,
Yeah, no, it's
yeah,
hilarious. In
yeah,
fact, talking about PMAX, I can't really think of this. You know, me and you both have worked in other ad platforms before, and we've been there when new features have been released. And I just can't. I was thinking about this, but I cannot think of a single thing that was released that really was better, that made performance better especially in the first like year or two of its release. I think as like some things have grown, they've gotten better, but like I think the only thing maybe that has been kind of okay is Advantage Plus in Facebook ads or Meta, which I'm not even sure if you're familiar with.
I
But
don't use
like,
Facebook ads. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they're horrible. I hate them too. I try to stay away from them, but sometimes like, I get caught up in them. But there's like, that's the only thing out of maybe 10 or 20 releases that I've seen in my lifetime. I can't think of a single one that's been like actually good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm racking my brain. I have heard whispers that sometimes Facebook's targeting goes through better, you know, up and downs. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Automated strategies are just like they've been bad so consistently in the first year or two that, like you said, that it's just like you lose trust in them at this point. There's been so many where like it sounds so good on paper, and you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
can't wait for this to come in, and Google's selling it so hard, and all the recommended settings, and you're like, I want this to work, and then it doesn't, and you're almost when you manage like our accounts, you almost forced to feel kind of like antiquated because it's like Google's like, look at all this shiny new stuff over here. And we're like, I have to keep holding down the fort with, exact match keywords. And they make you feel like you're the only person not doing like what they're
Yeah.
telling you to do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just hope they don't get rid of exact match. If they do, dude, if they do, that's so bad. I feel like they'd lose a lot of. I mean, I don't know, maybe they wouldn't lose a lot. Maybe they'd make a lot of money, but
I
performance would
don't know.
definitely go down. Who knows? My opinion really, my opinion really is that it was built for e-commerce. Which at the time when it was released and when it was like teased, even before it was released, was that e-commerce was a huge thing and it was getting bigger and bigger every year. But in my opinion, I don't think that it a lot of businesses really find it useful, because GA4's like main dashboard has like this worldwide view, and it's like, here's all your users across the whole world. And it's like, yeah, but if I'm like only selling domestically, I don't even care about like 90% of the world. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so that's number one. And then two, I think that they've just made it a little bit unnecessarily difficult to set up. Like, they've changed like the terminology for conversions. They call them key events, and they've they've made it difficult to create those key events. Now you have to actually create them through like Google Tag Manager and then sync them, which is, they're like basically incorporating other products in their ecosystem, which makes it kind of difficult. So yeah, I mean, my hot take is just like, it's just unnecessarily difficult. And I'm not like, by no means, I'm not an expert in it. I like to use like DataBox, and I'll just like, use my original source data there and see how things are doing. But I really don't touch Google Analytics that much, to be honest with you, because I feel like it is just not really that useful for a lot of my clients.
I
What are
think
your
you're
thoughts?
I think you're, I mean, I don't really, for me, it's like whatever they're using, I'm going to adapt to. So I feel like it doesn't matter what I think, but the general sentiment is just like Google Ads, like you said, it's the same. I think the reason I brought it up is because it highlights like the mindset of Google, and it's shifting everything to be for like the e-commerce, and more specifically like the sole proprietor e-commerce, or like the shop that's just a couple people selling their stuff, because they want to get everyone involved. It's almost like they made it so simple that if you have like a medium grasp on Google or on analytics, it's hard.
Yeah.
And it's like where having a medium ask in or a medium grasp on like universal analytics, the previous generation, was like enough to be dangerous, and now it's like enough just to confuse you.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, DataBox is great. I mean, it's a generally speaking paid platform, because you're basically just connecting all of your ad data, and CRM data inside of one dashboard. So I mean, you might use like Looker Studio for
mhm,
this stuff,
that's what I use.
which is
Yeah.
like, I mean, I think some of the connections cost money there. I could be wrong, and maybe they're not, maybe they don't. But I've always used DataBox. It's super easy, and I mean, I follow the CEO on LinkedIn. He posts a lot, so that's also a plus for me. I like actually see what this guy's thinking about. But I just think the vision for their business going forward is only getting better. They want to integrate with HubSpot. And something that I really like about HubSpot recently was that they integrated with Clarity. And so I can see all my heat map and session data with each one of my leads, or at least like
Yeah, that's
70% of
cool.
them, right? And then if you include Databox, you just have this ecosystem of like HubSpot, Clarity, Databox, which I don't know, is just like super dangerous in my opinion. I get all the information I need there for the revenue team. So it's just really productized at this point for me. I'm just like, oh, these are the tools I use. This is how I get all of my insights that I need.
It's funny how like important integrations are in the SaaS world. I think I sleep on it all the time and realize like it really matters what it works with. Like you just talked about that ecosystem and why you're sold on that and why you're gonna, you already know the next product you're gonna get because of the integration that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you run integration based campaigns?
Oh, like for some startups, like if a startup is integrated
Yeah,
with like a
like
bigger name player in the space, or in like a complementary space. Is that what you mean?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like Arena is like a procurement platform for like big manufacturers, and I work with a client who like integrates with Arena, and that's a keyword we target. We're not trying to compete with them, but we're just
Yeah.
trying to like.
Oh yeah, I would factor that in my like outcome based like campaigns. So
Mhm,
whenever I work with a client now and we get into their like this whole like 90-day sprint that we do, we have product marketing, customer success, and account executive interviews. And basically I
mhm,
just like talk to these people and I'm trying to understand like why do customers like especially for customer success, right? It's like why do they like your product? Why do they not like why don't they churn? Why don't they go somewhere else? And a lot of times it's like, oh, like they like this integration specifically. And I'm like, oh, like how many people say that? And they're like, oh, like 50% of them say this. And you're like, oh, great. So I'm going to bid on that keyword and make sure, even if it doesn't even have like more than 10 search volume, I'm going to bid on it. And then,
mhm.
that's just like a long tail campaign and, it's pay per click. So you only pay when someone clicks. So,
Right.
low competition, you can have a lot of these kinds of like outcome based or capability based campaigns. And so I actually lump that into like my, evergreen Google Ads strategy, which is like you never need to turn these campaigns off and you just need to have like some strategy and oversight on them every like 90 days, which is kind of my strategic positioning now with my services. But yeah, I know I agree. I mean, it's also a similar concept to competitor targeting, right? Like
Yeah.
it's very similar. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I think competitor targeting can be weird. But yeah, this is like. Yeah, you know that they, if some softwares have a prerequisite of using this blank software, right? And so that it filters that out, and it's like, well, we can't get a lot of lead volume off it. But it goes back to that thing. It's like, why do you want lead volume of people who aren't relevant to your ICP? It's like, why don't
Exactly.
spend less money in pay per click and spend more on a content writer? And so you don't need to spend $30,000 a month in Google Ads just to get more leads, like. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people feel pressure once they get it to work. They don't really realize that there is like kind of a limit to what you can reach with Google Ads. It can be better spent elsewhere.
Definitely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and part of the evergreen approach that I take is, hey, if you don't rank for these kinds of terms now, like integrations or competitor alternatives or outcome-based searches, then let's bid on them. Like I said, it's pay per click. So you're going to give people that are higher up in the marketing funnel. So not your standard bottom of funnel searches. These are like top of funnel, middle of funnel searches that are getting
Hmm.
people taking the mental real estate, number one. But what I say afterwards is like, hey, once we're bidding on this stuff, it would be great if you worked with like a Lachey Lewis and made these pieces of content that are organic that can actually start to rank for these things, because then maybe you don't need to
Hmm.
pay for them anymore. So it's sort of
Right.
like looking at it in an investment standpoint of, hey, if this is something we need forever, let's just make a piece of organic content. And before we have that content and before it's ranking, let's bid on it for now.
And if you could rank on it, you're eligible for so many more impressions because those mid funnel searches, I'm sure you've noticed, but like maybe other people haven't, that there's not ads at the top of those mid funnel searches a lot of the
Exactly.
time. So like you're just not showing up for that, which is fine. I mean, again, you're not paying for a click. You're not paying for a click. That's not an issue. But It's just not the best way to get that kind of reach all the time. You talk about outcome-based searches, and I'm sure we just categorize searches differently, but is that um, like increase?
Yeah. So I would get like outcome based searches from the sales team or from like the account executive. So it might be something as generic as like streamline efficiencies between X and Y platform. Like
Mhm.
that's super long tail, so we'd probably try to bring it back and or we just put it in a phrase match like word type. Definitely
Yeah.
not broad, but like we might experiment with the phrase and like these kind of middle funnel searches because the variations of what people are typing in are going to be drastically different. And the
Mhm.
thing is we're not expecting low CPL like cost per lead in the middle funnel and definitely not in the top of funnel. But it's sort of like, hey, if we have these bottom of funnel ads running right now, and this is like the benchmark CPL data that we have, and then we turn on the top of funnel and middle of funnel, and then we start to see, hey, like bottom of funnel CPL is dropping, then that just kind of goes to show like, okay, yeah, middle funnel, top of funnel is actually dropping the CPL, which is making like a better return on ad spend. So to answer your question, yeah, like the searches are really just, saving time, saving money, kind of things like that, which is primarily why people are motivated to buy. And that's why we talk to the account executives or just someone in the sales team about that.
Yeah. What kind of landing page are you delivering to them? Are you getting? I mean, this obviously there's like, I guess probably important to state that like at least in B2B SaaS, there's like softwares that you anticipate the person will buy on the first time they see it. And then there's the far side where it's like they might buy after 6 months of interacting with your website and salespeople. But in
Yeah.
general, maybe to more speak of that higher CLV range, what are you serving people who are looking?
Yeah. So for that kind of stuff, we're going to generally try to push them to use cases or case studies because that's going to be
Mhm.
more of like a middle of funnel search. So that's, if you're in the paid media space, you're going to be for middle of funnel, you're going to be showing case studies, testimonials, like use cases. So I try to, whenever we work with a client, I really try to make sure that they have like comparison pages for competitive searches. We have use cases for middle of funnel, case studies, testimonials for middle of funnel, and then top of funnel. It's like, hey, do we have good content we can push these people to? Like, is
Mhm.
there a blog that actually makes sense to put out here? If so, like maybe we should push it because we're not expecting these people to convert. We don't need to have like an optimized conversion landing page in the top of funnel. We just need to put something that they're like expecting to click on there, and they won't even maybe even think that it's an ad because like you said, it's a top of funnel search. It's not like they typed in a category term or they're like best content platform. Like that's, yeah, you're gonna put a
Yeah.
freaking conversion landing page there. But if it's like I need to make a PDF, like like you're not gonna put like a conversion uh you're not gonna put like a freaking conversion landing page there.
Yeah. 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 Be interesting to me to see. So are you, when you're starting a new account, say they've never run ads before, are you?
I try to, like I said, like I try to do it in the beginning. It does depend on ad spend, right? So
Mhm.
if they only have like 5K ad spend or something, I don't know, like we might just have to stay in BOF, like bottom of funnel. But
Yeah.
if they have like anywhere upwards of 20 to 50, like I'm already like immediately thinking we should be in middle of funnel, top of funnel, conduct those interviews with the team members and actually show up for those things that we don't have content for yet. And so, I mean, it's not just like, hey, I'm only working with marketing directors or only working with VPs of marketing. Like I'm kind of just like integrated in the team for 90 days and I'm like talking to all these people that like maybe the VP of marketing doesn't even talk to, maybe because they don't have
Yeah.
time. So that's why I'm coming in. I'm coming in to like bridge the gap of knowledge and what is actually needed in the Google Ads account. And I mean, no offense to lower level specialists, but like they might not know to do that. Or they also don't have time because they have other things that they're probably being like grabbed to do. So I mean, that's the value add really, is you just come in and you bridge the gaps between the team members and try to optimize the
I,
ads accordingly.
I agree. And I think that's like when I'm, a lot of people spending 30 to $70,000 a month are in still that like small, medium-sized business stage. So you really do have the flexibility to say, like, that's why I like being in that same space that sounds like you are in. It's like you have the flexibility to be like, you hear a lot about Jim in sales. Like, can I talk to Jim and talk about, the
Yeah.
CRM and why I'm not seeing like, how they process those leads afterwards and why they do it a certain way, and maybe just talking to them about like the intents, because a lot of the times the sales just see, source and lead, in that they don't have any idea what like the intent of that lead coming in was. They don't know that this one actually just downloaded a case study and doesn't need to be
Yeah.
called or needs to be nurtured, or that kind of thing. And so, and it's kind of crazy that those conversations don't happen naturally, but that is what you're being brought in for as a PPC manager at the same time. So you should be expecting to have those conversations. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
James.
yeah. Well,
Cool. Honestly, I mean, we've kind of hit upon everything. We hit upon the B2C world and why Google Ads is kind of hitting and gearing towards that. We've talked about PMAX. We've talked about, what's wrong with PMAX and what's wrong with broad match. We've talked about AI and kind of our thoughts on like how that's going to impact ad managers, and really like
mhm.
we've talked about best practices, which kind of like this most recent part of our conversation where we were talking about, hey, like top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel Google ad campaigns, and factoring in SEO content over time. So we pretty much hit everything, James. This was like super, super insightful. Very, I would say it's high level enough that like your medium level people would understand, and then I could say it's advanced enough that your expert Google Ads people might be thinking a little differently about their campaigns afterwards. So I love this episode. I think this was great.
Yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, I was trying to think of maybe some like one little high level summary, because like I feel like our both of our goals with our content is to like help people run internally Google Ads as best they can. If they can't, then obviously we'd love to take their business. But like I try to help people like be able to run it in-house as long as possible, to make it affordable and that kind of thing. How about you give first let's do like a kiss, Mary, punch bid.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would definitely. Because like, dude, I really only have like two. So but no, here's what I would say. So I would kiss ECPC, enhanced cost per
Yeah.
click, because I'll kiss it for like, it's like my short term thing, like my fling, because I'm not keeping ECPC on forever.
Hmm.
I'll marry I really like max conversion value in the B2B space, because if you're tying your CRM data in, then like you can optimize around that deal size value. And then as far as like punch, I mean,
There's
I don't
so
know,
many.
like, I mean, yeah, it's like I don't really use anything else after that. Like,
Yeah.
I think there are unique use cases for some things and definitely worth testing, but I will always be kind of turned off from the like the target impression shares, or like the like more brand awareness related like bidding strategies. I think it's just like there to
Max clicks.
confuse people.
Yeah.
Yeah, like max clicks is probably not worth it. Like,
Yeah.
I've used it before, like, no, get me wrong, like I use it sometimes in tandem with like ECPC, but I'm kind of turned off by it. Like
Hmm.
ECPC and like max conversion value, that's it. I don't really use anything else.
Yeah, Max Clicks is one that I once in a while am like, maybe I could get this to work. I have these exact match, like super bottom funnel keywords. And my only issue is that our cost per lead is just a little high. Like, what if I just use Max Clicks and just drove with automation, drove the click price down? Like, would that work? And I've never seen it work that well. But yeah, it's one of those things in Google Ads where I'm like, maybe I could get this to work. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you. My thing that I would throw in for Mary is like my ultimate goal often is to get to a target CPA or a target ROI. Obviously, that's another step up in like data requirements. But I've seen it work with not a lot of data as well. What I like about it is that like I can play with budgets because I have a lot of seasonality. Like I mentioned the construction management software. there's different demands for different times, like the accounting side of things. Obviously, during accounting season, you have the invoicing things at the end of the summer when they're finishing projects. So I like to move budgets around, or I have to move budgets around a lot to accommodate for that. And I found when I move budget up or down with a max conversion strategy, there's just like this little like knee check with Google's algorithm sometimes. And so at least the idealistic manager in myself likes to have a target CPA put in there. So I could theoretically throttle the budget all the way up. And, it's not this idealistic, but, I could put the budget at that $100,000 a day. And as long as we're just hitting that $200 CPA every time, then, you can spend. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, for a second there, I thought you misspoke, but then you tied it back. You said $100,000 a day. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but no, that
Dude,
makes
yeah.
sense.
We're handling big budgets over here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think like target CPA works really well when you have a really good understanding of what your qualification rate from MQL to SQL is. If it kind of
Mhm.
fluctuates too much, then it's like so hard to pull that off. But if you're in a space where like if someone does take action and you know that 70% of the time they become an SQL and maybe 50% of the time after that they become an opportunity, like great. Like target CPA makes a lot of sense at that point because you're basically
Yeah.
reverse engineering your ROI. Yeah. Versus like if
Yeah,
you
I
just do
agree.
max conversion value, then it's just trying to get the highest deal size, which maybe you have standard deal sizes, maybe you don't. Like it just depends. So that's actually
Right.
an interesting use case that I don't really use CPA for, but I could for some of my clients, I think, now that I'm thinking about it.
But that in that case, go to like, why don't you do like I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong, but this is just like how I think about it is like, why don't you go to a target ROI then, or target, I forget what they call it.
Yeah, I mean, so that's true, and that's something that I would like want to test. I think
Right.
that the problem is just the target. I think it's target ROAS. I think it's ROAS. I
Yeah.
don't think it's yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I just don't. We don't have like a safe. I think it's quarterly where we have fluctuations with like how deals close. Especially this year, it's been weird with some of the clients where deals aren't closing in the cybersecurity
Mhm.
space as much. So it's like we just want to get the highest deal sizes and we want Google to prioritize those and get from there. We don't have like the standard rates to kind of
Fair
factor in, I
enough.
feel like. Yeah.
So you're saying the value of your customer is so high that like you have a big fluctuation in how much your leads can cost, basically, and or how much, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah,
I have
like
a couple like
sometimes
that too.
someone will come through and they're worth like 70,000 and then sometimes
Yeah.
they come through and they're only worth 7 and it's like, okay, well. They're
That's
really
crazy.
different. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
very
that is
different.
really different. Yeah, when you
Yeah.
get into like seat numbers and stuff like that, the deal sizes start getting pretty wild.
Yeah.
Where it's like they have 200 seats or 1,000 seats. That's a big difference for whatever you're charging. Um, yeah, that's interesting. If you don't care about that, because that's my issue with like the max ones is that it makes sense that I mean this is why it's case by case. You have to understand what they do, not just what they're called and how they operate, because that's different
Hmm.
too. Like max conversions, that sounds great all the time, but if you have a budget, say, I mean, there are some markets where you have 10 conversions available per month in say this one keyword. If you max your budget out, Google might find a way to show up for the top for every single search and show up for every search possible. And your cost per conversion could be $1,000 when last month when you had half the budget it was $500. So
Yeah.
just like that's my one issue with Max. But if that's not a problem,
Yeah, yeah. And so like I guess what we do is we calculate like the ROAS kind of separately. So not really inside the ad account or we
mhm,
kind of do it inside the CRM and we definitely do it inside a data box. But yeah, like you're right. It's definitely
yeah,
it's something you just have to like check on, which yeah, maybe like thinking about it now, it's like maybe I am just like I should test that, see if it works. If it does, then great.
I mean, that's the best thing. I don't know how you go into agreements with your clients, but I my mindset when I go in is like, well, if they've been running ads for a long time with a lot of money, it's one thing. But like if we're starting an account, it's like this is a test. Everything we do is one big test. I mean, I'm going to give you as good of a guess for a good start. But like kind of the mindset I like B2Bs to be in, even if I'm just giving them advice to run it on their own, is like show up for keywords that if you never got a conversion for them, that you'd be happy about that. So like,
Yeah.
if you're a construction management software for remodelers, show up for remodeler construction management software, see who's showing up for that keyword. And you're not going to get no conversions for that, but just pretend what are the keywords that you would be most proud of paying for, without, that's how I would start. And then make sure you're matching those intents with like proper offers, and you should be like on your way.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's smart. I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever positioned it that way. I'm always like, hey, this is what we're projecting in 6 months. So maybe 5 of those months are going to be not that great. But in month
Yeah.
6, like we might actually get to the point where we're getting a positive ROAS. And at that point, we can probably up spend a little bit, try to optimize from there. So yeah, I like that. I might use that a
I
little
kind of
bit
feel
more
like it's
pitches.
just two ways to go about the same thing. Basically, like, because I think there's a lot of people in our space who will be like, we'll get a lot of leads, don't worry,
Yeah, you can't
and
say that. Can't say
yeah.
that. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you're being conservative. I'm sure you see results a lot faster than your projections, which is a good thing. You're just going to but if you can sell people on the conservative projection, you're just going to be a hero when you come in, and your client relationship is going to be 1,000 times better because you didn't
Yeah.
butter them up, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and also
Yeah.
like we'll just tell clients up front if like, hey, like you might not see results in 6 months. Like this is a
Hmm.
longer term strategy. Like literally conservatively, it looks like you're gonna do bad. And maybe even liberally, you also might do bad. Do you still want to
Yeah.
invest in this? Like you don't have
Right.
to. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's how many people work at your company? Is it just you?
It's just me. Yeah, just me
Yeah.
right now.
You
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to tell with all the content you put out, but you
Appreciate that.
you I feel like when it's just you don't have that sales pressure coming down from like a company to like try to make the sale, and like you're also the person who has to sit in there with the meetings as they go on. So like it kind of I've been talking to a lot of people lately who want to talk to people who are just themselves as Google ad managers, and I think that kind of speaks to it because it's like you're not being pressured from the top to sell this with false expectations. You're also the person that knows they have to go into the meetings with your client and face the consequences. So like it incentivizes you to be honest. And if you make that sale, it's like that relationship is so much better than a sale that I'm sure, the people that we scoop clients up from who like promised all these things and didn't even come
Yeah.
close. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
James,
we've been pushing the minutes. I wonder if someone.
we'll see. We'll see. I know I will. I always listen back to my podcast when I go on like runs and stuff. So I'm excited to listen to this again because I feel like we did talk about things that like there's this mindset of I think you need to be reminded more than you need to learn sometimes. And for this, like this whole conversation for me, like I've learned a little bit and definitely reminded of a lot of things that sometimes you just have to listen to them over and over and over, week in, week out, until they really sink in. And that's the same for other marketing leaders too. So if anyone's listening to this, you're doing the fighting the good fight, to say the least.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's not easy out there for all B2B SaaSes. You're struggling with low volume and high cost per clicks, but just target keywords that mean something to you, not
Absolutely.
simpler than it sounds.
Yeah. James, before we wrap up, how could people get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to reach out?
Well, most of my brand is published on LinkedIn. You can find me under James Gregg. My father's name is also James Gregg, and he's on LinkedIn, so I'm the younger of the two.
Nice.
And and or you could email me at james@searchclickboom.com. Yeah, I mean that's the two best ways. DM me, like some posts. If you just follow me on LinkedIn, I'm genuinely just trying to give tips to improve your LinkedIn, and most of them just come from ideas from audits. So like there's other accounts that are B2B SaaS accounts making these mistakes, and you can maybe learn from them. That being said, you can grab a free audit from me about any time if you're a B2B SaaS. So I'll look through your accounts. I also do LinkedIn ads, but Google ads, I feel like
Oh, yeah. Awesome, James. Well, thank you so much. Everyone give James a follow if you're listening this far. I think we had a great conversation. So see you guys in the next episode.
Ian, thanks, man. It was nice talking to you again.
Likewise. Thanks, Jay. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Optimize Your Marketing podcast. We post weekly on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Every Tuesday morning, you can expect an episode about AI, PPC, or SEO. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to leave it a 5-star rating or a thumbs up. It really helps me understand which kind of episodes you like the most so I can bring more of those to you. Until next time, I'll see you next week.